So this day is chapter 1 being January and page 24 being the 24th. And I want to talk about this week, whether you got triggered. And I'm going to be talking about what it means, and then you'll be able to let me know as we go along if you relate to it in any way. If any of you have PTSD, or if any of you have friends who have PTSD, you will probably understand that. PTSD is the fancy acronym for post-traumatic stress disorder. It's when we relive a trauma from our past. I actually suffer from it. I have what they call PTSD on a number of issues, quite honestly. But it doesn't mean I can't live a healthy and productive life. It just means every now and then, this thing comes and beats at my door. And I'd like to say that if you want to know how this triggering affects you, in everyday terms, let's say that it's when something dramatically changes your mood from being, you can be in a good mood, and then suddenly you feel either very angry, very stressed, or very anxious. For those of you who were watching the broadcast last week, can you remember that I was quite happy and chit-chatting away and delighted to see Benji pop in, and Benji popped in and he said something absolutely without any intent of upsetting me in any way. And the next thing, you guys watched me react, and the tears started to flow, and you could hear the stress in my voice. I'm going to explain that because I think it is very important for you to understand how that happened. We know it had nothing to do with Benji, right? Benji just said something. What happened was where that took my brain. And that's what I want to show you. Jody's saying stress causes a physical reaction in me. My autoimmune system flares up, my heart races. If it's a serious stress, and I get a ringing in my ears. Yes, you need to know what your own personal warning signs are. Now, in the everyday terms, we talk about being triggered, and it cannot necessarily be PTSD. We just talk about being triggered. When suddenly, 1 minute you're happy, next minute you're not. You can also get triggered. For example, people like Jody and myself who have arthritis, you can get triggered by the weather, all right? And it's nothing happens that we're aware of, and suddenly we'll start feeling, I'm holding this finger because obviously I feel it in my finger, but suddenly I will feel this finger really hurting me, and this joint really seizing up, and I'm going, what on earth's wrong? And then I'll look outside and guess what, it's raining. Isn't that interesting? So it's like a bodily reaction sometimes rather than a mental one. We can get triggered by a word, and I'm certain that that's the story that happened to me with Benji. We can get triggered by a look. Some of you will relate to that, or an action. For example, somebody can suddenly look at you like this, and maybe it's the way that your daddy used to look at you just before he clipped you one. You know what I mean? It's just like there's a reason for it. An action. Actions are very interesting in terms of that. I have a reaction when people do this at me, when they point at me and going like this. This is like somebody treating me like a 5-year-old. You will do this, you will do that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, no, actually, no. Beth, hi, Beth. Yes, Beth is saying, we always love your input, Beth. Beth is saying maybe triggers are needed to cause something in ourselves to address an issue, causing it. Triggers forced me to become more self-aware. If I'm not triggered, I don't know what to work on next. You see, Beth, that's why I absolutely adore you, because you see all these things as learning moments. You don't see them as you are a bad person, or, you got a major issue because you get triggered. No, you see them as warning bells, if you like. And just before I go on, let me just explain, because I think the picture is always easier to see. Explain what happened with that comment that Benji made. And by the way, how many of you got triggered last week or the last broadcast when Jeannie talked about the National Guard? You see, things will happen. And Jeannie, I want to talk about that as well, so remind me, because it was a brilliant example of how we get triggered. All right, so here's what happened. You know, we're busy chit-chatting away, and then Benji typed something in, and I can't even remember what it was, but I remember the word. The word at the end was faith. How many of you remember that? Okay. Now, obviously, the people listening to the broadcast could not see what Benji typed. And the next thing that happened was my mind and my whole body changed, I'm pretty certain, and the tears involuntarily started to fall out of my eyes. Now, no way was it about Benji. This was about me. And so what had happened was I went to school, high Anglican school with nuns and things, none the better for it, and got to be a habit. Anyway, and so what happened was that I had heard a story, and I was only 6. I was at boarding school. And so at 6 years old, I heard a story that really impressed me, and it was all about love. And I was very touched by it. So I took that story home and told the story about this little girl whose family didn't have enough money. So what they did was they packed up boxes with nothing in them, but actually gave them to each other because they were filled with love. And then what happened when I took that story home was I got punished with it. It was Christmas time. Christmas morning, I got up and along with my brothers and sisters under the tree. And guess what? Everybody had these presents, and so did I. Everybody was unwrapping their big bikes and their fancy this and fancy that. And me, I got empty boxes. And it hurt. I don't mind telling you it hurt. And I was very confused. And then when I queried it, I was laughed at by the family. Everybody was in on this joke except me. The whole family laughed and said, oh, but that's what you said you liked. Now, the result of that was that a number of issues in my life. I learned not to trust. I learned not to tell the truth on certain things, as you can probably imagine. I learned to be very careful what I told my family, and so all sorts of things resulted from that. However, what I want to show you is the PTSD. The post-traumatic stress was I saw the word faith in my mind. My little librarian went straight to the nuns, and then, actually I missed that out, went straight to the nuns that was in here. And then as soon as I thought about the nuns, I thought about being 6 and the story about love, and then everything else that followed that ended up with me being laughed at. And that's what caused the tears.